Hi, I'm Alex. If you're new here, welcome. If not, welcome back. I have not filmed one of these videos in 2 years, and I've read 250 new books since the last time I filmed one, so I figure it's time to update my 5-star reads. So I'm going to start with classics because I feel like a lot of the ones I have on here are classics, and then we'll probably, I think, build like lit fic out of this and go from there. So the only one that I actually physically own, and I should have figured this out first, the only one that I the only one I own is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This was probably one of my favorite assigned readings that we've ever had. I think that I actually skipped, don't tell my AP English teacher this, but I actually skipped reading this when my class read it because I was like, it's boring, the quizzes are easy, we don't have to write a paper on this one, and then read it on my own time, and I loved it. I think a lot of really cool concepts come out of this. They literally named the drug Soma after the happiness pill that the people take in this book. Which I just think is so cool. So if you haven't read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, it's a little bit of a dystopian world, but a really great read. Also in my classics category are The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, which is about a high school male student who's feeling lost. It took me, I think, 3 times to actually understand it in reading it, but I'm so glad that I gave it more chances because by the end I just thought it was so brilliantly written. Also on this list are Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I don't remember what it was about this book that made me love it, but this is another one I read as an optional reading. We had to pick a book to read, and I chose to read Fahrenheit 451 and really loved it at the time. And then the last one, which is my favorite, I think, book to movie TV adaptation ever, is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It made me want to read all of his other works. I still haven't, but I definitely want to, especially the original version of Gatsby, which I always forget what the name of it is, but I'll put the name here. So that's all of the actual classics, but moving into, I guess this is not literary fiction because it's quite literally nonfiction, but Into the Wild by John Krakauer. It's the only nonfiction book that I have rated, although other ones that I would include that are super high up here are Paris Hilton's memoir. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend. And also I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, which, like I said, I don't really rate nonfiction, but those are some of the top ones for me. And then I think we're just on to what I have now. Sorry, I have the whole list on my phone. So onto the books I have in literary fiction. The first one is Where the Crawdads Sing. I remember taking a long time to get into this book, which now, when I take a long time to get into books, I don't rate them 5 stars, so now this probably would have been rated 4.5 stars by the way I read, but this story is so good. The movie of this is also incredible. I loved how this was done. Delia Owens did a great job. Anything that's in Reese Witherspoon's book club, honestly, I will probably enjoy. So that is that. And then the other lit fic book I have on here is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. If you haven't read this, do yourself a favor and pick it up. This is about somebody who tries to unalive themselves, and they end up in the Midnight Library where they're able to take any book off the shelf and see what their life would have been like if they made a different choice. It kind of just points out that the grass isn't always greener. There's always something that could happen no matter what decision you make. So that's a really good book in my opinion. And then what should we do next? I guess we'll do fantasy next. I guess this is probably not a surprise to anybody, but Moth and At the War. I had to make sure they were in the right hands. The Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Wings and Ruin. These are the second and third books in the ACOTAR series. If you haven't read ACOTAR yet, my channel is probably not going to be the one to convince you to do it, but ACOTAR is just so good. I know a lot of people like Throne of Glass better. I think so far I personally prefer ACOTAR better, but I'm only on Queen of Shadows, so we'll see if that changes. Other fantasy books I have on here are The Elite and The One. These are the second and third books in the Selection series. First one being The Selection. And the series is about like a dystopian world in which the prince of the royal family is sort of... He plays the bachelor, and girls from all of the districts, sort of set up similar to Hunger Games. The girls from the districts are able to like come compete for his love. So it's about America and Maxon. They're one of my favorite book couples ever. I really loved them. And they're both YA fantasy, these ones, and I actually bought them for my niece, my 12-year-old niece last year. So they're definitely a good, like, if you have a teenager who needs to read a book, like these are good. Is that all the fantasy? Oh, how can I forget my baby? Fourth Wing. This, I mean, I loved Fourth Wing. I have already done a reread of it. I ordered the special edition version of it when it was just a blank thing by the same publisher. Like, I don't care. I need it. I can't wait to have the sprayed edges and the beautiful cover of it, although this one is going to sit on my shelf as well and be loved and cherished. This will probably be the one that I like loan out to people. But Fourth Wing is about like a school where kids go and they can pick what they want to train for life, and the main girl, Violet, her mom is like the head master of the school and wants her to be a dragon rider even though she wants to be a scribe. So you are going through the process with her of becoming a dragon rider, which is fun. Alright, we are now into romance. I'm going to start with the most controversial ones because I already know that people are going to be mad about it and I don't really care. So I have 3 Colleen Hoover books on here, okay? And I will say I've read like 12 or 13 of Colleen Hoover's books, and these are the only 3 that are on this list. I do think that these ones in particular have stuck with me. Unlike the rest, I honestly can barely tell you what they're about, but these 3 have stuck with me. I'm going to start with Verity. It was my top #1 book of 2022. This is about a woman who becomes a ghostwriter for like a huge author who is supposed to be like paralyzed basically and can't really do anything for herself. Some creepy things start happening. It's pretty wild. I do also own the hardcover version of this, the special edition that has the extra chapter in the back. I want to say I'm team letter. I was team manuscript after reading this, but after reading that one, I think I'm team letter. So that's Verity. The next Colleen Hoover book I have on here is All Your Perfects. This was one of the first books I read this year, and it made me cry. I don't know, I might need to reread it and it might get knocked down after. I was reading it during a particularly emotional time, which doesn't help, but it's about a woman who is like experiencing infertility, and it's really affecting her marriage, and it really, I feel like, hits home if infertility is something that you're afraid of or something that you're experiencing. I would say this book is a good one to pick up, although there are some things that happen in it that are not going to make you feel great, so just know that. And then the last one is It Ends With Us. I just remember having such a visceral reaction to this book, and again, I haven't read it in over 2 years at this point, but I just remember this being something that I thought about for days, and I am excited for the movie. I don't really care what people have been saying about the filming and the direction and costumes and whatever. I'm just excited to see this come to life. But Also a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching story about domestic abuse. So if that is something that's going to trigger you, don't read this. Alright, moving on to things that aren't going to get me canceled. So next I have In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. This is one of the books that got me back into reading when I first started reading again. This is about a girl who has is it a dream? She has like a vision of what her life looks like 5 years from now, and she's not with her fiance, and like her life is kind of weird. And it makes her freak out because she's somebody who has every second of her life planned, and as somebody who used to have every second of her life planned, I really connected with this book because it makes you like second guess everything. But I really enjoyed it, and I buddy read it with a friend, and I know she really enjoyed it as well. Then we have The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegmund Broca. This is a couple that writes together, which I think is so fun, but this book is about two authors that write books together, and they were just friends the whole time, and then they get in a fight, and then they're forced to go back and finish out their contract to write one last book. So that's what this is. I really loved it. I thought it was written really well. I own 2 other books by these authors. My camera is sitting on them, which I'm excited to read because I really liked this one. Next, let's go into Abby Jimenez. I have Part of Your World and also Yours Truly. These have 2 of the best book boyfriends of actually all time. So Daniel is like the mayor of a small town, and he like helps her when her car breaks down, and then they start dating, sort of seeing each other casually, but she knows he'll never fit into her world. So it's a very interesting commentary on, I think, different like classes, but more the blue collar versus white collar thing. I don't know. It's very interesting. It's written so well. Abby Jimenez is the best, so definitely would recommend that, as well as Yours Truly. Jacob is the best representation of anxiety in a book I have ever read, and the way that him and Brianna like function as a couple in order to help him overcome some of the issues that he has in regards to anxiety is incredible. I literally handed this to my husband and was like, this is your guidebook, like, time for you to figure out how to help me, right? So I loved those books so much, and it made me read all of her other books. Moving on to Emily Henry. I'd say this is, well, I guess it's the same number of books as Colleen Hoover, but I have Beach Read, of course, the OG. I think this was in my last 5-star video, but I could be wrong. Which is about a woman whose father dies, and she has to go to his lake house and clear it out. Finds out some secrets about his life and is kind of like going through it. Runs into an old classmate, Gus. If you're on Book Talk, if you're on Book Instagram, if you're on BookTube, I guarantee you've heard of Augustus Everett. He is also one of my like top 5 book boyfriends, and the way he talks to her is just, it's so good. But they get into a competition where they're both kind of experiencing writer's block, so she has to try to write his genre and he has to try to write hers, and they take each other on like adventures to help them get in the mood to write, basically, or inspire their writing. I guess it's like research in theory, but that is Beach Read. And then, as we're going in publishing order here, it's Book Lovers. The first time I read Book Lovers, I actually rated it 4.5 stars. I reread this recently and bumped my rating up to 5 because I love it. Nora and Charlie are so cute. This is definitely like he falls first, and honestly he falls harder. I loved Book Lovers. I think this is probably the least deep of Emily Henry's books, but still like very cute, very fun, and their banter is just so good. But Emily Henry's the queen of that. And lastly, we have Happy Place by Emily Henry. Well, lastly for Emily Henry, we have Happy Place, which I, again, absolutely loved, ate up this book, read it all in one day. I read this in a 24-hour reading vlog, so if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts, go watch that. But Happy Place is about a group of friends that has this like beach house, lake house they've always gone to in Maine, and the girls whose family owns it is selling the house, so they're going to do all these things one last time. But there is a couple who has broken up, Harriet and Wynne. They broke up, they were engaged, no one knows that they ended their engagement, and they're at this thing and they have to fake date. So it's fake dating, it's forced proximity, it's found family, it's second chance sort of, but really just really touching. Also a lot of commentary on anxiety in Happy Place, but I think that it was done just a little better in yours truly. Moving on to Christina Lauren, I have The Unhoneymooners on here, which I've seen this book getting a lot of slack recently. A lot of people saying, like, it's a 2-star book, they DNF'd it, whatever. I haven't read this in 2 years. This is probably one that I would need to reread to tell you if I still rate it 5 stars. But at the time, I read the whole thing in one sitting. I didn't even get up to use the bathroom. I laughed the whole time. I was giggling, kicking my feet. This is about 2 people, the maid of honor and best man at a wedding, who they're the only 2 people who don't eat one of the foods, and then they're the only 2 who don't get food poisoning. So they end up taking the couple's honeymoon trip, but they won like a honeymoon sweepstakes, so if they don't act like a couple on the trip, they have to pay for the whole thing in full. It's like 10 grand or something. So they have to act like a couple. It's fake dating. It's really fun. But I don't know if I would still rate it 5 stars today. I would have to reread it to say that. And then there's my favorite Half Night Stand, also by Christina Lauren. I would say this one feels more like reading an Allie Hazelwood book. They're both professors. They're in like a friend group that is a found family. They've always sort of been into each other. And they navigate their way through friends. They're friends to lovers. I think that's why people don't love this one, but I did. Also, I think this cover is so much better than the green one. They have this, to be honest. Moving on, speaking of, we'll go to Allie Hazelwood next. So, The Love Hypothesis by Allie Hazelwood. This is the first book that she had published, although her short stories are very good too. They're just up there somewhere. This is about a PhD candidate who ends up kissing one of the professors at her college because she told her roommate she was going on a date and runs into her roommate, so she ends up like kissing this guy, whatever. Fake dating. They're both in academia, if that's something you like. I feel like everybody's read this by now, but if you haven't, I would highly recommend picking it up. And then also, Love Theoretically. This is her newer release. I know she has another book coming out in like a week, if it didn't already come out. I actually don't know. I haven't seen it at Barnes at all, so I'm gonna guess it has not come out yet, but I don't remember what the release date is on it. But Love Theoretically is about a young woman who's trying to get a job at a university, and in her spare time she is like an escort, but not an escort, more she's a fake girlfriend. I don't know what to call it. And the person who she's being the fake girlfriend for, his brother is the one who is interviewing her, so it gets messy, it gets fun. I loved Love Theoretically. It had me giggling, it had me kicking my feet, it made me blush. Like, I loved it. Moving on, we have all single authors now. We're going to start with Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This is the 3rd book in the Dreamland Billionaire series. The first book is The Fine Print, the second book is Terms and Conditions. These are all about the Kane brothers, who their grandfather left them each a task that they needed to do in order to earn their part of their inheritance. And the family basically like owns Disney, is how you can think of it, but So this is the third book. It's a second chance romance. They're at Lake Wisteria, and they're at the Cairns lake house that they have there. But the girl that Callahan dated when he was younger lives there with her daughter, and he shows up because his task was to clean out and sell the house. So this book was so good. It made me sob sitting in a Starbucks. It made me want to see my husband as a boy mom or as a girl mom. I adored it. Next is Talk Bookish to Me by Kate Bromley. This is about a girl whose best friend is getting married and she needs to write a book, and her deadline is coming up, fast approaching. She doesn't think she's going to meet it, and then somebody comes into town for, I think, an engagement party or something, some kind of pre-wedding event, who happens to be her ex-boyfriend, and he ends up staying with her while he's in town. It's forced proximity. I thought this book was really good. He then serves as her muse to finish writing. I've never heard anyone talk about this, so I would highly recommend picking this one up if you think that sounds interesting, although I feel like I didn't really describe it very well. Next is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. I don't know how you pronounce it. Sorry, I ran out of storage, but The Spanish Love Deception is about Catalina, who is going to her sister's wedding, and her ex-boyfriend is the best man, and she doesn't want to look sad and lonely, so she needs someone to go with her as her date, and her boss, Aaron Blackford, volunteers for the job, but she thinks he's always hated her. It's enemies to lovers. It's definitely he falls first, and harder, and I loved this. And then this book, after it comes The American Roommate Experiment, which I also really enjoyed, but I didn't rate that one 5 stars, just this one. The last book I physically have is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This is about Anastasia, who's an ice skater, and Nate, who's the team captain of the hockey team, and something happens and they're forced to share a rink, and then her partner gets hurt, and Nate ends up stepping in to be her ice skating partner for practice purposes. And it's a romance. It's very spicy. If you don't like spicy books, I would not recommend picking up Icebreaker by any means, but I did really enjoy it, and I have Wildfire, which is the second book, sitting downstairs. I think, what is this series called? I don't know. And then the last book that I rated 5 stars, and it's my most recent 5-star read. If you watched this video ends when I find a 5-star, this was the one. But that is the Mindfuck series by St. Abby, which is a pen name, spelling out the word stabby if you didn't get that. But I loved that series. I only technically rated the last book 5 stars, which is Painted All Red, but the series is all sold in one book and reads as one book, so the whole thing is 5 stars. It's about a woman who is getting revenge, and she's unaliving people in a pretty gruesome way, and there is an FBI agent who is looking for her, and they end up meeting and together, and their story is just very interesting. But that is all. Oh no, I have one more. I can't believe I forgot this. This one, oh, that's a lie. There's 2 more. So this last category is going to be childhood nostalgia books, which again I haven't read in a long time, but these are ones that if I was going to pick up a book for someone younger, that I would absolutely grab one of these because I loved them when I was younger. The first one is Elsewhere by Gabrielle Zevin, and I know she's sort of getting a lot of hype right now for Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, but her other books are also very good, especially Elsewhere. Elsewhere is about somebody, I think she's 17, a young girl who dies. She gets hit by a car, and goes to elsewhere where you age backwards from the age you died back to 0, and then you're like reborn, and it's all like a cycle that happens. But she's like watching and trying to find out what happened to her and get closure on her death and how she died, because she doesn't know. She just remembers leaving the store and then being in Elsewhere. So I really liked Elsewhere. I would definitely recommend it. It's something I would definitely reread now. I don't know that I would rate it 5 stars now, but I did when I was a kid. And then the last book is the 13 Little Blue Envelopes, which my like 6th grade teacher gave to me because I was reading like Twilight and Hunger Games, and I think she was like, can you pick up something else? So she gave me a copy of this book, which is about a girl whose grandmother dies, I think, and leaves her 13 envelopes, and it's a bunch of adventures, and it's a big like European vacation. It's very fun. There was a new book, well, it's not new anymore, but a second book came out to it called The Last Little Blue Envelope, but the whole series is very fun. If you're looking for a book for like a fast book for you, or a book that you need to buy like your younger sister or your niece, or you're a parent and looking for something to buy for your kid, I would definitely recommend 13 Little Blue Envelopes. Who's the author? That's something that I don't even know. Maureen Johnson. Wait a second. Maureen Johnson as in Truly Devious Maureen Johnson? Huh. Interesting. Anyways, that's all my 5-star books as of October 13th of 2023. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one.